The Grand Elm Hotel smelled like old money and older secrets. Its crimson carpets swallowed my footsteps as I dragged my suitcase through the lobby, the kind of place that made you feel like you were trespassing in someone's memory. Chandeliers dripped crystal above, catching the dim light and throwing it across mahogany walls. I was beat, my bones aching from a month of tour buses and screaming crowds. Boston was supposed to be a break, a few nights to breathe before the next show. But something about this place made my skin prickle, like the air was too heavy, too still. The receptionist, a woman with sharp cheekbones and a name tag reading Ellie West, barely looked up from her computer. Her fingers clicked across the keys, steady as a metronome. "Checking in, Miss Eilish," she asked, her voice flat, like she'd said it 1,000 times. "That's me," I said, forcing a smile. "Just Billy's fine, though." I leaned on the counter, my rings clinking against the wood. "This place always feels so intense." Ellie's eyes flicked to mine, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "Old buildings have their moods," she said, sliding a keycard across the counter. "Room 407. Elevators to your left. Enjoy your stay." Her tone said she didn't care if I did or not. I grabbed the keycard and headed for the elevator, the brass doors creaking open like they hadn't been oiled since the 1920s. The ride up was slow, the hum of the cables mixing with a faint, rhythmic sound I couldn't place. Like a whisper, too soft to catch the words. I shook my head, blaming it on jet lag. Too many late nights, too many cities blurring together. My room was a time capsule. Heavy drapes, a 4-poster bed, a mirror that looked like it had seen more than its share of faces. I dropped my bag and flopped onto the mattress, staring at the ceiling's ornate plasterwork. The whispers were back, louder now, curling around the edges of my hearing. "Find her," they seemed to say, or maybe I was just losing it. I sat up, heart thudding. The room was empty, but the air felt crowded, like someone was watching from the corners. I crossed to the window, pushing back the drapes. Boston's lights glittered below, but the glass was cold, almost damp, under my fingers. A shadow flickered in the reflection, not mine, gone when I turned. "Okay, Billy," I muttered, "get a grip." But my pulse wouldn't slow, and those whispers kept scratching at my brain. Sleep wasn't happening. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through messages to ground myself. Phineas had texted, asking if I'd settled in. I started typing a reply when a scream tore through the wall. Sharp, desperate, cut off too fast. I froze, phone slipping from my hand. The silence that followed was worse, thick and suffocating. I bolted to the door, yanking it open. The hallway was empty, gaslit sconces casting long shadows. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing. Nothing. But the whispers were there, louder, urging me forward. I followed them, barefoot, to the next room over. The door was ajar, just a crack. I pushed it open, heart in my throat. The room was a mirror of mine, but Messier. A suitcase lay open, clothes spilling out. A glass of wine sat untouched on the nightstand, next to a phone with a cracked screen. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled like someone had left in a hurry. I stepped inside, the floor creaking under me. "Anyone here?" I said, softer now. The whispers answered, a low hum that made my teeth ache. Something glinted under the bed. I knelt, reaching into the dust, and pulled out an earring, a small silver hoop. It wasn't mine, but it felt heavy, like it carried a story. I stood, clutching it, when footsteps sounded behind me. I spun, expecting trouble, but it was just Ellie, her face tight with suspicion. "What are you doing in here?" she asked, her voice low, almost a hiss. "This is Clara Henry's room." "She's a guest." "Was," I said, holding up the earring. "I heard a scream, Ellie. And now this room's empty." "Where's Clara?" Ellie's jaw tightened, but her eyes darted to the earring, then away. "You're mistaken," she said, too quick. "Clara probably stepped out. People come and go. Don't make a scene, Billy." "Stepped out?" I stepped closer, my voice sharp. With her stuff all over and her door open? After a scream like that? Come on, Ellie, you heard it too, didn't you? She crossed her arms, her posture screaming, "Don't push me." I didn't hear anything, she said. And you shouldn't be in here. Go back to your room. I'll handle this. But the whispers were screaming now, words I couldn't catch, and that earring burned in my palm. Clara Henry was gone, and this hotel knew why. I met Ellie's stare, my gut twisting with a mix of fear and stubbornness. Fine, I said, pocketing the earring. But I'm not dropping this. As I walked back to my room, the hallway seemed to close in, the walls humming with secrets. I locked my door, but sleep was a lost cause. The whispers didn't stop, and neither did the feeling that Clara's disappearance was just the start. Something was awake in this hotel, and it wanted me to listen. The Grand Elm Hotel didn't sleep, and neither did I. My room felt like a cage, the walls pressing in with every creak of the old building. That earring, Clara Henry's earring, sat on my nightstand, catching the moonlight like a tiny accusation. The whispers hadn't stopped since I found it, slithering through the air, too faint to pin down but too real to ignore. They weren't just in my head. I'd tried blasting music through my headphones, but the voices cut through, muttering about betrayal, about someone named Lillian. I was rattled, but curiosity burned hotter than fear. Clara was gone, and this hotel was hiding something. I slipped the earring into my pocket and grabbed a hoodie, pulling it over my pajamas. The hallway was dim, the gaslit sconces flickering like they were in on the secret. Clara's room was still there, door shut now, probably locked by Ellie West to keep me out. I pressed my ear to the wood, half expecting another scream. Nothing but the hum of the whispers, urging me to move, to find something. I wasn't sure what, but standing still wasn't an option. The elevator was out of the question, too loud, too exposed. I found a stairwell at the end of the hall, its iron steps cold under my bare feet. The whispers grew sharper as I descended, words like truth and hidden slicing through the static. I ended up in the lobby, empty except for the faint glow of Ellie's computer screen behind the reception desk. She was gone, probably on a break, leaving the place unguarded. Perfect. I crept behind the desk, my heart hammering. The computer was locked, but a stack of papers caught my eye, guest logs and maintenance notes. I flipped through them, finding Clara's name, check-in date 3 days ago. No checkout. My fingers froze when I saw a note scrawled in the margin, room 409, complaints of noises. That was Clara's room. Noises. Like whispers. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun, clutching the papers, and came face to face with a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine shoot. Dark curls, sharp jaw, eyes that screamed trouble. He grinned, hands in his pockets, leaning against the desk like he owned it. Late night sleuthing, huh, he said, voice smooth as whiskey. I'm Jake Morrison. Journalist. Saw you poking around earlier. You're Billie Eilish, right? I narrowed my eyes, not liking how easily he'd clocked me. What's it to you, Jake? I said, stressing his name to match his cocky vibe. You always creep up on people at 2 a.m? He laughed, low and easy. Only when they're digging into something juicy. Heard about the scream. Figured you might know more, seeing as you were in that room. He nodded toward the papers in my hand. Find anything good? I stuffed the papers back, my guard up. Just checking on a guest. Clara Henry. She's missing, and no one seems to care. Jake's grin faded, his eyes sharpening. Missing? That's a story. Mind if I tag along? I'm good at finding things people don't want found. I didn't trust him, not with that slick charm, but he might know how to dig deeper than I could alone. Fine, I said. But don't get in my way. I brushed past him, heading for the hallway behind the desk. The whispers were louder here, pulling me toward a door marked staff only. It was unlocked, swinging open to reveal a narrow corridor lined with old portraits. Dusty frames, stern faces, all watching me. The air was colder, thick with the smell of mildew. I stopped at a painting of a woman, her eyes wide, almost alive. The plaque read Lillian Grace, 1923. The whispers surged, her name echoing in my skull. Lillian. Was she the one talking to me? Jake whistled, peering over my shoulder. Creepy lady. You think she's tied to your missing guest? Maybe, I said, my voice tight. The earring in my pocket felt heavier, like it was hers, not Clara's. I moved on, the corridor ending at another door, this one leading to a staircase down. The whispers screamed go, and my gut agreed. I started descending, Jake close behind. The basement was a maze of pipes and crates, lit by a single flickering bulb. The whispers were deafening now, a chorus of voices overlapping. I followed them to a pile of boxes, my hands shaking as I pulled one open. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, pages yellowed. I flipped it open, finding Clara's name in neat handwriting, along with notes about the hotel, about Lillian Grace, about a betrayal that broke the walls. My breath caught. Clara had been digging too. Jake read over my shoulder, his breath warm on my neck. Whoa, he said. This is big. Clara was onto something. You think she got too close? Before I could answer, a shadow moved across the wall, too tall, too wrong to be ours. The whispers cut off, replaced by a low, guttural hum. I grabbed the journal, backing up. We need to go, I whispered. We bolted for the stairs, the hum chasing us. Back in the corridor, I slammed the door shut, my chest heaving. Jake looked spooked, his charm gone. What the hell was that? He asked. I don't know, I said, clutching the journal. But Clara knew something, and it got her taken. I glanced at the portrait of Lillian Grace, her eyes seeming to follow me. The whispers started again, soft, insistent. Find him, they said, clear as day. I turned to Jake, my voice steady despite the fear. You still in? He nodded, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Oh, I'm in. We headed back to the lobby, but as I passed a mirror in the hallway, I froze. My reflection was there, but so was hers. Lillian Grace, pale and hollow-eyed, staring back. I blinked, and she was gone, but the whispers laughed, low and knowing. Whatever Clara had found, it wasn't just a story. It was a warning. The Grand Elm Hotel was starting to feel like a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve, but Clara Henry's journal burned a hole in my hoodie pocket, and those whispers wouldn't let me walk away. I barely slept, my dreams a mess of Lillian Grace's hollow eyes and that shadow in the basement. By morning, the hotel's opulent lobby looked less glamorous, more like a stage set for something sinister. The chandeliers flickered, and every creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning. I was in deep, and I knew it. I sat in the hotel's dining room, nursing a coffee that tasted like regret. The journal lay open on the table, Clara's neat handwriting spilling secrets. She'd written about Lillian Grace, a woman betrayed in 1923, tied to the hotel's original owner. Clara's notes were obsessive, circling words like justice and hidden room. She'd been chasing the same whispers I was hearing, and now she was gone. My fingers brushed the earring in my pocket, its weight a reminder that I wasn't imagining this. Jake Morrison slid into the chair across from me, looking annoyingly fresh for someone who'd been chased by shadows at 2 a.m. Morning, Billy, he said, stealing a sip of my coffee. You look like you saw a ghost. Oh, wait, you did. His grin was all charm, but I caught the edge in his eyes, like he was weighing how much I'd share. Funny, Jake, I said, shutting the journal. You got any bright ideas, or are you just here to look pretty? I leaned back, sizing him up. He was trouble, no question, but he'd stuck around last night, and I needed someone who could dig without flinching. He leaned forward, voice low. I was thinking we check the hotel's records. Old guest books, maybe. If Lillian Grace was here in 1923, her name's gotta be somewhere. Could lead us to what Clara was after. I nodded, grudgingly impressed. Not bad. But we're not sneaking around in broad daylight. Ellie's already got her eye on me. As if on cue, Ellie West appeared, her receptionist uniform crisp, her expression colder than the coffee. She stopped at our table, arms crossed. "You two causing trouble again?" she asked, her voice sharp, like she was daring us to lie. "Just having breakfast, Ellie," I said, flashing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Unless you've got news about Clara Henry. Found her yet?" Ellie's jaw tightened, a flicker of something, maybe guilt, crossing her face. "Like I said, she probably left. People do. You should focus on your stay, not stirring up drama." She glanced at the journal, her eyes narrowing. "And stay out of places you don't belong." She walked off, but her words hung heavy. She knew something, and it wasn't just hotel policy. I turned to Jake. "Guest books. Tonight. You in?" He smirked. "Wouldn't miss it." The day dragged, the whispers a constant hum in my ears, muttering about Lillian and him, whoever that was. I kept Clara's journal close, rereading her notes until they blurred. She'd mentioned a guest book from the 1920s, stored in the hotel's archive. If we could find it, we might find Lillian's story, and maybe Clara's too. After midnight, when the lobby was a ghost town, Jake and I met by the reception desk. Ellie was off shift, the night clerk dozing in a chair. We slipped behind the desk, finding a door to a cramped office stacked with boxes and files. The air smelled like dust and secrets, the whispers buzzing like static. I started pulling open drawers, finding receipts and faded menus, nothing useful. Jake, rifling through a shelf, let out a low whistle. "Jackpot," he said, holding up a leather-bound guest book, its cover cracked with age. 1923. "This is it." We crouched by a desk lamp, flipping through brittle pages. Names and dates blurred together, but then, there it was, Lillian Grace, signed in looping script, checked in June 7, 1923. No checkout date. My stomach twisted. "She never left," I whispered. Jake's finger traced the page. "Look at this. Same date, same page. Edward Grace. Relation, maybe? Lover?" The whispers surged, sharp and angry, spitting Edward's name like a curse. I gripped the book, my knuckles white. Clara was onto this. Lillian and Edward. Something went down, and it's still here. A noise from the hallway made us freeze. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Jake shoved the guest book back, but I grabbed my phone, snapping a photo of the page. The whispers were screaming now, words like basement and locked. I remembered that door from last night, the one we hadn't dared open. It was calling me. We slipped out, ducking into the corridor. The footsteps faded, but the tension didn't. Jake's face was pale, his usual swagger gone. "You heard that, right?" he said. "The voices. They're not just in your head." I nodded, my throat tight. "They want us to find something. Downstairs." The basement door was at the end of a service hall, its lock rusted but solid. The whispers were a roar, guiding my hands as I jiggled the handle. Jake pulled a penknife from his pocket, working the lock until it clicked. "You're full of surprises," I said, half impressed, half suspicious. The door swung open, revealing a staircase that smelled like damp earth. The whispers pushed me forward, but my feet hesitated. "You sure about this, Billy?" Jake asked, his voice soft, almost human. "No," I said, stepping down. But Clara didn't get a choice. Neither does Lillian. The basement was darker than before, the bulb overhead dead. My phone's flashlight caught cobwebs and broken furniture, but the whispers led us deeper, to a wall of crates. Behind them, a door, heavy and iron, its surface scratched with faint marks, like someone had clawed at it. My heart pounded as I touched it, the metal ice cold. Before I could try the handle, the door groaned, inching open on its own. The whispers laughed, low and triumphant, as a cold draft spilled out, carrying the faint scent of roses and decay. Whatever was on the other side, it was waiting for us. Thank you for listening to these incredible stories. Our team would really appreciate it if you give us a like and comment. your opinion is very important to us. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed. The Grand Elm Hotel's basement felt like a tomb, and that iron door creaking open didn't help. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of roses and something sour, like regret left to rot. My phone's flashlight cut through the dark, but the shadows seemed to push back, curling around the edges of the beam. The whispers were a chorus now, chanting "Find him" over and over, each word a needle in my skull. I glanced at Jake Morrison, his face pale but his eyes sharp, like he was chasing a story bigger than either of us. I wasn't sure I trusted him, but I wasn't sure I trusted myself either. Clara Henry's journal and Lillian Grace's name had me hooked, and there was no turning back. I stepped through the doorway, the cold biting my skin. The room beyond was small, its walls rough stone, like it had been carved out of the earth. Old crates lined one side, their wood splintered, and a single chair sat in the center, its upholstery torn, stained with something dark. The whispers softened, almost reverent, as I moved deeper. My foot caught on a loose floorboard, and I stumbled, the board popping free. Beneath it, something glinted. I knelt, heart racing, and pulled out a locket, silver and heavy, its chain tangled. I clicked it open, revealing a faded photo of a woman with wide, haunted eyes. Lillian Grace. I knew it without a doubt. Jake crouched beside me, his breath uneven. "Holy shit, Billy," he said, his voice low. "That's her, isn't it?" "Lillian. What's she doing under the floor?" I closed the locket, my fingers trembling. "She's trying to tell us something," I said, pocketing it next to Clara's earring. The whispers surged, clear now, urgent. "Find him. He took everything." I stood, scanning the room. The chair, the crates, the walls, all of it screamed secrets. Clara had been here, or close. Her journal mentioned a betrayal, a man tied to Lillian's story. Edward Grace, the name from the guest book. Was he the him the whispers wanted? Jake started poking through the crates, pulling out yellowed papers and broken trinkets. "This place is a gold mine," he said, holding up a ledger. "Hotel records, 1920s. Looks like Edward Grace wasn't just a guest. He owned this place. Big shot, lots of enemies." I grabbed the ledger, flipping through it. Payments, guest names, nothing stood out until I saw a note in the margins, scrawled in different ink. Lillian, June 10th, 1923. Room sealed. My stomach dropped. Sealed. Like she'd been erased. I showed Jake, my voice tight. "Clara found this, or something like it. That's why she's gone." He nodded, but his eyes flicked to the door, like he sensed what I did. The air was shifting, growing colder, the whispers turning sharp, almost angry. Something was coming. I shoved the ledger into my hoodie, ready to bolt, when a piece of paper slipped from the crate. I snatched it up, my flashlight catching the words. A letter, and signed, dated June 11th, 1923. "Edward killed her. The walls know. They'll never let him go." The whispers roared, a scream that made my ears ring. The chair in the center tipped over, slamming to the floor with no one near it. Jake grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Billy, we gotta move," he said, his voice cracking. I didn't argue. We ran, the locket and letter burning in my pocket, the whispers chasing us up the stairs. The iron door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Back in the basement's main room, we stopped, panting, the silence worse than the noise. The whispers were gone, but the weight of what we'd found wasn't. Jake ran a hand through his curls, trying to play it cool. "Okay, so Edward Grace was a murderer. Lillian's his victim. Clara digs this up, and poof, she's gone. This is front-page stuff, Billy." I glared at him. "This isn't a story, Jake. Clara's missing, maybe dead. And Lillian's still here, screaming at us. You saw that chair move." I pulled out the locket, holding it up. "This is personal. For her. For Clara." He held up his hands, backing off. All right. I'm with you. But we need more. That letter's a start, but it's not proof. I nodded, my mind racing. The whispers had said find him, but Edward Grace was long dead, wasn't he? Unless him was someone else, someone tied to the hotel now. I thought of Ellie West, her cagey answers, her insistence that Clara had left. She knew more than she was saying. We need to talk to Ellie, I said, heading for the stairs. She's hiding something. Jake followed, but as we reached the lobby, the night clerk was awake, eyeing us like we'd robbed the place. We mumbled excuses and slipped out, the guest book photo and ledger still safe. Back in my room, I spread everything on the bed, the locket, the letter, Clara's journal. The pieces were coming together, but the picture was ugly. I couldn't shake the feeling that Ellie was the key. I grabbed my phone, texting her. Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk about Clara. No response, but I knew she'd seen it. The whispers started again, soft, almost pleading. He's still here, they said, and I shivered, wondering who they meant. As I lay down, the locket on my nightstand, I heard a new sound, faint but clear. A woman's voice, not a whisper, coming from the wall. Billy, it said, soft and broken. Help me. I sat up, heart pounding, staring at the empty room. The voice wasn't Lillian's. It was Clara's. The Grand Elm Hotel was no longer just a building, it was a living thing, its walls pulsing with secrets that wouldn't let me sleep. Clara Henry's voice, that faint, desperate help me from the wall, had me wide awake, staring at the ceiling as dawn crept through the heavy drapes. The locket, the letter, and Clara's journal were spread across my bed, each piece a shard of a story that was starting to cut too deep. Lillian Grace's whispers were back, softer now, weaving around Clara's plea like a duet of ghosts. My skin itched with the need to move, to do something, but my body ached, and when I glanced in the mirror, I froze. 3 thin scratches marked my arm, red and raw, like someone had clawed me in the night. I hadn't felt a thing. I yanked on a long-sleeve shirt to hide them, my mind replaying the dream I'd had before Clara's voice woke me. Lillian Grace, her face pale, her hands reaching out, standing in a room that smelled of roses and blood. She'd whispered about betrayal, about Edward Grace, her lover, her killer. The dream felt too real, like she'd left those scratches as a warning. Or a plea. I grabbed the locket, its silver cold against my palm, and headed out. Ellie West hadn't answered my text, but I wasn't waiting for permission to corner her. The lobby was buzzing with morning guests, their chatter a stark contrast to the weight in my chest. I spotted Jake Morrison at a corner table, typing furiously on his laptop, probably drafting his big scoop. He looked up as I approached, his grin faltering when he saw my face. "You okay, Billy?" he asked, closing his laptop. "You look like you wrestled a demon and lost." "Something like that," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. I hesitated, then pulled up my sleeve, showing him the scratches. "Woke up with these. And I heard Clara last night." Her voice, Jake, coming from the wall. "She's not gone. She's here." Jake's eyes widened, but he didn't laugh it off. "That's intense," he said, leaning in. "You think it's Lillian doing this? Or something else?" I shook my head, the whispers stirring in my ears, muttering about him again. "I don't know. But Clara was chasing Lillian's story, and now she's trapped, same as Lillian. We need to find that sealed room Clara wrote about. And we need Ellie to talk." Jake nodded, but his expression shifted, a glint of ambition in his eyes. "This is bigger than a missing guest, Billy. Murder, ghosts, a cover-up? I could break this story wide open. Get us some real answers." I grabbed his wrist, my voice low. "This isn't about your byline, Jake. Clara's life, Lillian's truth, that's what matters. You push too hard, you'll scare off whoever's hiding this." I let go, softening. "Help me, but keep it quiet. For now." He held my gaze, then nodded, though I could tell he was itching to publish. "Fine. For now. Let's find Ellie." We headed to the reception desk, but Ellie wasn't there. A new clerk, a bored guy with a name tag reading Tom, shrugged when I asked for her. Ellie's on break, he said. Try the staff lounge, down the hall. His tone said he didn't care if we found her or not. The staff lounge was a cramped room with a coffee machine and a sagging couch. Ellie sat in the corner, scrolling on her phone, her face tightening when she saw us. What now, Billy? She asked, standing, her voice sharp. I told you, Clara left. Let it go. I stepped closer, the locket heavy in my pocket. I heard her, Ellie, I said, keeping my voice steady. Last night, her voice, begging for help. And I found this. I held up the locket, watching her reaction. Her eyes flicked to it, then away, too fast. You know about Lily and Grace, don't you? And Edward. What happened here? Ellie's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands clenching. You're out of your depth, she said, her voice low, almost a growl. This hotel's old. It's got stories, sure. But you're chasing ghosts, and it's gonna get you hurt. She paused, her eyes softening for a split second. My mom worked here, years ago. She heard things too. Whispers. She left because it drove her crazy. You should leave too. Her words hit hard, not just because of the warning, but the crack in her voice when she mentioned her mom. There was a story there, one she wasn't telling. I'm not leaving, I said, stepping closer. Not until I know what happened to Clara. And Lillian. Help me, Ellie. You know more than you're saying. She shook her head, backing toward the door. Stay out of it, Billy. For your own good. She slipped out, leaving the air heavier than before. Jake whistled, low. She's scared, he said. And she's definitely hiding something. You think her mom's tied to this? Maybe, I said, my mind racing. The whispers were back, urging me to look higher. I thought of Clara's journal, her notes about a sealed room, a place the hotel had buried. We need to find that room. It's upstairs, I think. Somewhere they didn't want anyone to see. We spent the day combing the hotel's upper floors, dodging maids and curious guests. The whispers guided us, faint but insistent, leading to a hallway on the 5th floor, its wallpaper peeling, its air stale. At the end was a door, unmarked, its handle rusted. Jake tried it, but it wouldn't budge. Locked, he said, pulling out his penknife. Give me a sec. As he worked, the whispers grew frantic, words like inside and truth piling up. My arm throbbed where the scratches were, and I swear I felt eyes on me, not from Jake, but from the walls themselves. The lock clicked, and the door groaned open, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust coated a velvet chaise, a cracked mirror, a wardrobe with its doors ajar. The air smelled of roses, just like my dream. I stepped inside, the floor creaking under me. The whispers stopped, replaced by a single, clear voice. Clara's. Billy, she said, her voice echoing from the walls. It's here. The truth. My heart stopped as the mirror flickered, showing not my reflection, but hers, pale and trembling, her eyes locked on mine. The Grand Elm Hotel's sealed room was a time capsule of grief, and Clara Henry's face in that cracked mirror had me rooted to the spot. Her image flickered, pale and desperate, her lips moving without sound, like a silent film trapped in the glass. The air was thick, the scent of roses choking, and my heart pounded so loud I thought it'd wake the whole hotel. The whispers were gone, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my skin. I reached out, my fingers brushing the mirror, but it was just cold glass, Clara's face gone as quick as it came. I turned to Jake Morrison, his eyes wide, his usual swagger replaced by something close to fear. Did you see that? I whispered, my voice shaking. That was Clara, Jake. She's here. He nodded, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. Yeah, I saw, he said, his voice low. This place is messed up, Billy. What the hell are we dealing with? I didn't have an answer, but the room did. It was small, cluttered with relics of another era, a velvet chaise, its fabric moth-eaten, a wardrobe spilling lace and silk, a vanity strewn with perfume bottles, their contents long evaporated. The walls were papered in faded roses, peeling at the edges, and the floor creaked with every step. This was Lillian Grace's room, I knew it, the one Clara's journal called sealed. The one Edward Grace had buried to hide his crime. I moved to the wardrobe, my hands trembling as I pulled open its doors. Inside hung dresses, delicate and yellowed, but something heavier caught my eye. A shawl, once cream, now stained with dark, rusty splotches. Blood. I lifted it, the fabric stiff, and the whispers returned, sharp and angry, spitting he did this. My stomach churned. Lillian's blood, maybe. Or Clara's. Jake was at the vanity, rifling through drawers. "Check this out," he said, holding up a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. "Love notes, maybe? Addressed to Lillian, signed E. Gotta be Edward." I took the letters, my fingers brushing the brittle paper. The words were flowery, full of promises, but the last one was different, dated June 10th, 1923. "Meet me tonight," it read. "No one will know." The whispers hissed, a chorus of betrayal, and I knew this was the night Lillian died. Clara had found this room, these letters, and it cost her everything. "We need to get this out of here," I said, stuffing the letters into my hoodie with the locket and Clara's journal. But as I turned, a shadow moved across the wall, too sharp, too human to be a trick of light. The whispers turned menacing, words like leave and danger piling up. The shawl slipped from my hands, and the wardrobe doors slammed shut on their own, the sound like a gunshot. Jake grabbed my arm. "Billy, we're not alone," he said, his voice tight. He was right. The air was colder now, the rose's scent turning sour. I spun, searching the room, but it was empty, just us and the ghosts we'd stirred. "Let's go," I said, heading for the door. But as we reached it, footsteps echoed from the hallway, slow and deliberate. Someone was coming. I froze, my mind racing. Ellie West? The night clerk? Or something worse? Jake pushed the door shut, locking it with his penknife, but the footsteps stopped right outside, followed by a soft knock. 3 slow taps. "Billy," a voice called, low and muffled. Ellie's voice. "I know you're in there. Open the door." I glanced at Jake, who shook his head, his eyes screaming, "Don't do it." But Ellie's tone wasn't angry, it was scared. I hesitated, the whispers urging me to listen, to trust. I unlocked the door, opening it a crack. Ellie stood there, her face pale, her eyes darting like she expected trouble. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "This room's off limits. You're gonna get us all in deep shit." "Then tell me why," I said, stepping into her space. "Clara was here, Ellie. I saw her, in the mirror." "And Lillian Grace? Her blood's on that shawl. What's this hotel hiding?" Ellie's eyes flicked to the shawl on the floor, her breath catching. "You don't get it," she said, her voice breaking. "My mom used to talk about this place, about a woman who wouldn't leave. She said the walls remember everything. I thought she was crazy, but..." She stopped, looking past me, her face draining of color. I turned, following her gaze. The mirror was flickering again, not Clara this time, but Lillian Grace, her face twisted in anguish, her hands pressed against the glass like she was trying to break through. The whispers screamed, a single word, "Run." The room shook, the vanity bottles rattling, the chaise sliding an inch across the floor. "Move!" Jake yelled, grabbing my arm. We bolted, Ellie right behind us, the hallway blurring as we ran. The whispers chased us, Lillian's voice rising above them, raw and furious. "He's still here," she said, over and over, until we hit the lobby, panting, the hotel quiet again. Ellie leaned against the reception desk, her hands shaking. "I'm in," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But you're playing with fire, Billy." I nodded, my heart still racing, the letters and locket heavy in my pocket. Jake was quiet, his camera in hand, like he'd been snapping photos in the chaos. I didn't like the look in his eyes, too hungry, but I didn't call him out. Not yet. The whispers were soft now, but they hadn't stopped. And as we split up, heading to our rooms, I felt it again, that shadow, watching from the corner of my eye. Someone, or something, was following us. The Grand Elm Hotel was a maze of lies, and I was starting to feel like a rat chasing cheese I'd never reach. The sealed room had shaken me, Lillian Grace's face in that mirror burned into my brain, and Clara Henry's plea echoing in the walls wasn't something I could unhear. The locket, the blood-stained shawl, and Edward Grace's letters were stuffed in my backpack, each one a piece of a puzzle that felt more dangerous by the hour. The whispers were quieter now, but they hadn't stopped, muttering about him in truth like a broken record. I was exhausted, my arms still stinging from those scratches, but sleep wasn't an option. Not when Ellie West had finally cracked, admitting she was in, and not when Jake Morrison's camera clicks in that sealed room were starting to make me question his motives. I sat on my bed, the morning light filtering through the drapes, Clara's journal open in my lap. Her notes were frantic toward the end, circling a name, Edward Grace. She'd written about a hidden staircase, a place where the walls scream. I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus, when a knock at my door made me jump. I shoved the journal under a pillow and opened the door to find Jake, his grin too bright for the mess we were in. "Morning, Billy," he said, leaning against the frame. "You look like you need coffee. Or a vacation. Got a minute to talk strategy?" I stepped aside, letting him in. "Strategy?" I said, crossing my arms. "Or are you just itching to post those photos you took last night, Jake? I saw you snapping away while Lillian's ghost was throwing a fit." His grin faltered, but he recovered fast, flopping onto my desk chair. "Busted," he said, holding up his hands. "Look, I'm a journalist. Documenting's what I do. But I'm not publishing yet, I swear. This story's too big to rush. We need to find that staircase Clara mentioned. Could be the key to everything." I studied him, not buying the charm. "You want the story, fine," I said, my voice sharp. "But Clara's life, Lillian's justice, that's not a headline. You pull the trigger too soon, you'll ruin everything. Who are you really working for, Jake?" He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Myself, Billy. Always have. I chase truth, same as you. Difference is, I want the world to know it. You want to keep it quiet for some ghost? That's your call, but don't pretend you don't need me. I got us into that room last night. He wasn't wrong, and that pissed me off. I needed his skills, his nerve, but his hunger for fame was a liability. We find the staircase," I said, keeping my tone even. "But you keep that camera off until I say so. Deal?" He nodded, but his smile was too slick. "Deal." We headed to the lobby, the whispers stirring as we passed the reception desk. Ellie was there, her face drawn, like she hadn't slept either. She glanced up, her eyes locking on mine. "Billy," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk." "Alone?" Jake raised an eyebrow but shrugged, wandering off to grab coffee. I leaned on the desk, keeping my voice soft. "You said you're in, Ellie. So talk. What's with the staircase Clara wrote about? And your mom, what did she know?" Ellie's fingers twitched, like she wanted to bolt. "My mom worked here in the 90s, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She heard the whispers, same as you. Said they came from the walls, especially upstairs. She found a staircase once, behind a panel in the east wing. She never went up, but she said it felt wrong, like something was waiting. She quit the next day. Never told me why, just said to stay away from this place." My pulse quickened, the whispers humming in agreement. "Where's the staircase, Ellie?" I asked, leaning closer. "We need to find it." She shook her head, her eyes darting to the lobby. "It's dangerous, Billy. Whatever's up there, it's not just ghosts. My mom, she disappeared for a week after she found it. Came back different. Scared." I grabbed her hand, my voice firm. Clara's gone, Ellie. Lillian's trapped. If your mom knew something, we need to finish what she started. Show me. She pulled her hand back, but her resolve cracked. Fine, she said. Tonight, after my shift. East Wing, 3rd floor. But if we get caught, I'm denying everything. I nodded, the whispers buzzing with approval. Ellie walked away, leaving me alone with the weight of her words. A staircase that scared her mom into silence. A staircase Clara had chased. I was about to text Jake when I felt it, that shadow again, watching from the edge of my vision. I turned, but the lobby was empty, just guests and chandeliers. The whispers laughed, low and knowing. That night, Ellie led us to the East Wing, her flashlight shaking in her hand. The hallway was narrow, its wallpaper stained, the air thick with dust. She stopped at a panel, its edges barely visible, and pushed. It clicked, swinging open to reveal a spiral staircase, its iron steps vanishing into darkness. The whispers roared, a single word, up. Jake whistled, his camera already out. This is it, he said, his voice eager. Clara's jackpot. I shot him a look, but my heart was racing too. The staircase smelled of rust and roses, and every step felt like a dare. Ellie hesitated, her face pale. I'm not going up, she said, her voice breaking. I can't. I grabbed her shoulder, gentle but firm. Stay here, Ellie. Keep watch. We'll be back. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. Jake and I climbed, the whispers guiding us, the air growing colder with every step. At the top was a door, heavy and locked, its surface scratched like the one in the basement. Jake worked his penknife, but the whispers turned sharp, warning. He's here, they said, and I froze, feeling that shadow again, closer now, its presence heavy. The lock clicked, but before Jake could push the door open, a sound echoed from below, a low, guttural hum, like the one from the basement. Ellie's voice called up, faint and terrified. Billy, something's coming. The whispers screamed, and the door in front of us rattled, like someone, or something, was trying to get out. The Grand Elm Hotel's spiral staircase felt like a throat swallowing us whole, and that rattling door at the top was choking on something ugly. The whispers were a storm now, screaming he's here as Ellie West's panicked shout echoed from below. Billy, something's coming, she'd yelled, her voice cracking with fear. The air was ice, the smell of roses and rust so thick I could taste it. Jake Morrison stood beside me, his penknife still in the lock, his face pale but his eyes glinting with that reckless hunger I didn't trust. The door shook again, a low hum vibrating through the iron, and I knew whatever was on the other side wasn't just a ghost. It was a warning. Billy, we gotta move, Jake said, his voice tight, but he didn't budge, his hand on the door like he was daring it to open. The whispers hissed, sharp and urgent, spitting words like truth and inside. My heart pounded, but Ellie's fear pulled me back. I grabbed Jake's arm, yanking him from the door. Ellie's in trouble, I said, my voice low. We're not leaving her. The door rattled one last time, then went still, the hum fading. The whispers softened, almost sulky, but they didn't argue. I bolted down the stairs, Jake behind me, his camera bouncing against his chest. I didn't like how he'd been snapping photos again, but there was no time to call him out. We found Ellie at the base of the staircase, her flashlight trembling, her eyes wide. I heard it, she whispered, her voice shaking. That hum, like in the stories my mom told. It was coming from the hallway. She pointed to the panel we'd entered through, now shut tight, like it had sealed us in. You're okay, I said, grabbing her shoulder, steadying her. We're getting out of here. But the whispers were back, muttering about up, urging me to return to that door. I ignored them, pushing the panel open. The hallway was empty, but the air felt wrong, heavy with that same sour weight I'd felt in the sealed room. We slipped out, closing the panel, and hurried to the lobby, our footsteps too loud in the silence. Back in my room, we collapsed, the adrenaline crashing hard. Ellie sat on the bed, hugging her knees, while Jake paced, his camera still in hand. I spread out the evidence, Clara Henry's journal, the locket, the blood-stained shawl, Edward Grace's letters. My arm itched where the scratches were, and I could still hear Clara's voice, begging for help. The staircase, that door, it was all connected, but we'd run from the answers. We need to go back, I said, breaking the silence. That door, it's where Clara was looking. Lillian's truth is up there. Ellie shook her head, her voice small. You didn't feel it, Billy. Whatever's up there, it's not just Lillian. My mom said the hotel doesn't let go. She found something once, a book, like a diary. She burned it, said it was cursed. I thought she was losing it, but now, she trailed off, her eyes on the journal. Jake stopped pacing, his eyes sharp. A diary, he said, too eager. Like Clara's? Maybe Lillian's? If we find that, we've got the whole story, Billy. Murder, betrayal, front page gold. I glared at him. Enough with the headlines, Jake, I snapped. This isn't a game. Clara's trapped, maybe dead. Lillian's screaming for justice. You want to help, focus on that, not your ego. I turned to Ellie, softening. Where did your mom find it, Ellie? The diary? She hesitated, then sighed. The attic, she said. There's a storage room, locked, full of old stuff. She never went back after that. The whispers hummed, approving. Attic, they said, clear as a bell. I stood, my resolve hardening. We're finding that diary. Tonight. Jake grinned, but Ellie grabbed my arm. Billy, wait, she said, her voice urgent. There's something else. My mom, she had a photo, from her time here. It was her and a man, someone important. She said he was tied to the hotel's past. I think it was Edward Grace's son. If he's still alive, or his family is, they might know something. My stomach twisted. Edward's son. Him the whispers kept chasing? Where's the photo? I asked. At my place, Ellie said. I'll get it tomorrow. But Billy, if they're involved, they won't like us digging. I nodded, the pieces clicking, but not enough. The attic was our next move. We planned to meet after midnight, when the hotel was quiet. Jake left, promising to keep his camera off, but I didn't believe him. Ellie lingered, her eyes searching mine. Be careful, Billy, she said. This hotel doesn't just hold secrets. It fights to keep them. She left, and I was alone with the whispers, their voices weaving through my thoughts. I opened Clara's journal, rereading her last entry. The attic holds the heart, she'd written. Lillian's voice is there. I closed it, my fingers brushing the locket. The attic it was. After midnight, we crept to the east wing, finding a service door Ellie knew about. It led to a narrow staircase, its steps sagging under our weight. The attic was a sprawl of dust and shadows, crates and trunks piled high, lit by a single bulb. The whispers were deafening, chanting here like a prayer. I started searching, pulling open a trunk to find old clothes, photos, and then, there it was, a diary, its leather cracked, the name Lillian Grace etched on the cover. I opened it, my hands shaking. Her words spilled out, raw and vivid, detailing her love for Edward, his promises, his lies. The last entry, dated June 10, 1923, read, "He says we'll be free tonight." I trust him. My throat tightened. She'd trusted a killer. The whispers screamed, and a crate behind me toppled, spilling papers. Jake cursed, his camera flashing before I could stop him. The bulb flickered, and a shadow moved, tall and sharp, across the attic wall. The whispers turned to a wail, Lillian's voice clear and furious. He betrayed me, she screamed, and the diary burned in my hands, not hot, but heavy, like it was alive. We grabbed it and ran, the shadow chasing us, the attic door slamming shut behind us. Back in the hallway, we stopped, panting, the diary safe but the whispers still raging. Jake's camera was out again, and I saw it, a photo on its screen, not of the attic, but of me, holding the diary, my face pale and haunted. He'd been playing his own game all along. The Grand Elm Hotel was a house of cards, and Jake Morrison's camera was about to knock it down. That photo of me, clutching Lillian Grace's diary in the attic, glowed on his screen, my face a mix of fear and determination. The whispers were still ringing in my ears, Lillian's scream of "he betrayed me" echoing like a wound that wouldn't close. I stood in the dim hallway, Ellie West beside me, her breath uneven from our sprint out of the attic. The diary was heavy in my hands, its leather warm, like it was alive with Lillian's rage. Jake's grin was gone, replaced by a defensive squint as I stepped into his space, my voice low and sharp. "What the hell, Jake?" I said, jabbing a finger at his camera. "I told you no photos. You're not just documenting, you're building a story to sell. Who's this for? Some tabloid? Or someone worse?" Jake backed up, hands raised, but his eyes didn't waver. "Billy, chill," he said, his voice smooth, too smooth. "I'm not selling you out. This is proof, okay? We've got Lillian's diary, Clara's journal, a bloodstained shawl. People need to know what's happening here. This hotel's a crime scene, and you're the one cracking it. I'm just capturing that." "Capturing my face," I snapped, grabbing the camera. The screen flickered, showing more photos, the sealed room, the shawl, even Ellie's terrified expression by the staircase. "You're not helping, Jake. You're exploiting. Clara's missing, Lillian's trapped, and you're playing paparazzi." Ellie stepped forward, her voice shaky but firm. "She's right, Jake," she said. "My mom warned me about people like you, sniffing around this hotel for a scoop. You don't get it. This place fights back." Her eyes darted to the diary, then to me. "Billy, we need to hide that. If someone knows we have it, we're screwed." I nodded, tucking the diary into my hoodie with the locket and Clara's journal. The whispers stirred, soft but insistent, muttering, "Keep going." I turned to Jake, my anger cooling into resolve. "You want to stay in this, Jake, you play by my rules. No more photos, no leaks. We find Clara, we free Lillian, then you can write your story. Deal?" He hesitated, his jaw tight, then nodded. "Deal," he said, but his eyes said he was still playing his own game. I didn't trust him, but I needed his brain, his knack for digging. For now, he was still on the team. We split up, Ellie heading to her shift, Jake muttering about research. I went back to my room, locking the door, the whispers humming like a distant storm. I spread out the diary, its pages brittle, Lillian's words a gut punch. She'd loved Edward Grace, believed his promises of a future, but her last entry, June 10, 1923, was a knife. "He says we'll be free tonight. I trust him." The next page was blank, her story cut off. I closed it, my throat tight, and opened Clara's journal. Her last note mentioned the attic, but also eyes watching. Someone had known she was close. My phone buzzed, a news alert. My name splashed across a gossip site. "Billie Eilish haunts Boston hotel, chasing ghosts." My stomach dropped. Photos of me in the lobby, grainy but clear, credited to an anonymous source. Jake. He'd leaked, maybe not the diary, but enough to draw eyes. Reporters would swarm soon, and the hotel's secrets would get harder to uncover. I texted Ellie, telling her to meet me later, and hid the diary under my mattress, the locket and journal in a drawer. The whispers were louder now, urging me to look outside. I crossed to the window, pulling back the drapes. Boston's lights glittered, but something moved in the garden below, a figure, too quick to catch. The whispers laughed, low and knowing, and I felt that shadow again, watching, waiting. That afternoon, the lobby was chaos. Reporters crowded the desk, cameras flashing, their questions a blur. "Billy, what's the ghost story? Is it true you heard voices?" I pushed through, hood up, but a woman grabbed my arm, her voice sharp. "Miss Eilish, I'm with Channel 7. A guest claims they saw Clara Henry last night, alive, in the East Wing. Care to comment?" My heart stopped. "Alive?" I shook her off, muttering no comment, and found Ellie behind the desk, her face pale. "Is it true?" I whispered, leaning close. "Clara, alive?" Ellie shook her head, her voice low. "I don't know, Billy. A guest said they saw a woman, blonde, like Clara, near the staircase we were at. But no one's found her. It's probably nothing." The whispers disagreed, chanting she's here. I grabbed Ellie's arm, pulling her aside. "We need that photo, Ellie. Your mom's, with Edward's son. If Clara's alive, or if someone's playing us, it's tied to his family. Get it tonight." She nodded, but her eyes were scared. "Okay, but Billy, the hotel's watching. I feel it. Be careful." I spent the day dodging reporters, the whispers guiding me to the east wing again. The panel to the staircase was locked now, a new padlock glinting. Someone was covering tracks. I was about to leave when a maid, older, with tired eyes, stopped me. "You're the singer," she said, her voice soft. "You're looking for her, aren't you? The missing woman." I nodded, wary. "You know something?" She glanced around, then leaned in. "I saw her, 2 nights ago, by the garden. She was scared, said someone was after her. Then she was gone, like the wind took her." The maid slipped away before I could ask more, leaving me with a chill that wasn't just the air. That night, Ellie met me in my room, a faded photo in her hand. Her mom, young, smiling, next to a man with Edward Gray's size. "This is him," she said, her voice trembling. "Thomas Grace, Edward's son. He's dead now, but his family still owns part of the hotel." The whispers roared, and the photo slipped from my hand, landing face up on the floor. Clara's voice came again, faint but clear, from the wall. "Billy, they know," she said, and the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. The Grand Elm Hotel was closing in, its walls tightening like a trap, and Clara Henry's voice, that faint "they know" from the darkness, had my nerves screaming. The lights in my room flickered back on, casting harsh shadows across Ellie West's pale face. The photo of her mom with Thomas Grace, Edward's son, lay on the floor, his eyes staring up like he was still watching. The whispers were a low growl, muttering closer in truth, but the air felt heavy, like the hotel itself was holding its breath. Lillian Grace's diary, Clara's journal, the locket, all of it was piling up, and now the Grace family was in the mix, their shadows stretching from 1923 to now. I was in over my head, but backing out wasn't an option. Ellie grabbed the photo, her hands shaking. "Billy, this is bad," she said, her voice barely steady. "If Thomas Grace's family knows we're digging, they'll shut us down. Or worse. My mom never talked about him, but she was scared of something. Someone." I nodded, my mind racing. The maid's story about seeing Clara in the garden, scared and running, didn't add up with the guest who claimed she was alive in the East Wing. Was Clara still out there, hiding? Or was the hotel playing tricks, using her voice, her face, to keep us chasing ghosts? The whispers didn't help, their words vague, like they wanted me to figure it out the hard way. I picked up Lillian's diary, flipping to her last entry. "He says we'll be free tonight." I trust him. Edward's betrayal was clear, but Clara's role in this was murkier. She'd been hunting the same truth, and now she was either a victim or a pawn. "We need to find that guest," I said, standing. "The one who saw Clara in the East Wing. If she's alive, we've got a lead. If not, we're being played." Ellie hesitated, then nodded. "I can check the guest log, see who's been in that wing. But Billy, the reporters are still out there. Your name's all over the news. If the Grace family's watching, they'll know you're involved." She wasn't wrong. Jake Morrison's leak had turned the hotel into a circus, cameras flashing every time I stepped into the lobby. I didn't trust him, not after that photo of me in the attic, but I needed his knack for sniffing out lies. I texted him, short and sharp. "Meet me, lobby, now. No camera." He showed up 10 minutes later, his usual grin dialed down, like he knew I was pissed. "Billy, before you start," he said, raising a hand, I didn't leak those lobby shots. Swear it. Someone else is watching you, probably tipped off by the staff. I crossed my arms, not buying it. Convenient, Jake, I said, my voice low. But we've got bigger problems. A guest saw Clara, alive, last night. You're good at digging. Find them. And if I see one more photo of me online, we're done. His eyes narrowed, but he nodded. Fine. I'll ask around, see who's talking. You checking the East Wing? Yeah, I said, glancing at Ellie. With backup. We split up, Ellie pulling the guest log while I headed to the East Wing with her directions. The hallway was quiet, the padlocked panel to the staircase still there, mocking me. The whispers stirred, guiding me to a window overlooking the garden. I pressed my face to the glass, the cold biting my skin, and saw it, a scarf, caught in the bushes below, its pattern matching one from Clara's room. My heart jumped. The maid's story was true, Clara had been out there, running from something. I ran downstairs, slipping past reporters to the garden. The scarf was silk, torn at the edge, and it smelled faintly of perfume, the same rose scent that haunted the sealed room. The whispers hummed, approving, but they added a new word, closer. I pocketed the scarf, my gut twisting. Clara had been here, alive, but where was she now? Back in the lobby, Ellie waved me over, her face tight. Found the guest, she whispered. Room 512, name's Martha Kellerman. Older lady, checked in a week ago. She's been asking about you, Billy. Says she saw something weird. We headed to Martha's room, knocking softly. The door opened to a woman in her 60s, her hair silver, her eyes sharp despite the late hour. You're Billie Eilish, she said, her voice steady. I saw you on the news. I know what you're after. Come in. Her room was tidy, but her hands fidgeted, betraying nerves. I saw her, Martha said, sitting on a chair. Last night, in the East Wing. A blonde woman, scared, running toward the staircase. I called out, but she vanished, like she wasn't really there. I thought it was a dream, but then I heard the whispers. They said her name. Clara. The whispers in my head agreed, chanting truth. I leaned forward, my voice soft. Did you see anyone else, Martha? Someone chasing her? She shook her head, but her eyes darkened. Not chasing, but watching. A man, in the shadows, near the panel. I couldn't see his face, but he was there, then gone. Like he knew I saw him. My blood ran cold. The shadow I'd felt, the one following us. Was it the him Lillian kept screaming about? I thanked Martha, promising to keep her name out of it, and left with Ellie, the scarf burning in my pocket. The whispers were louder now, urging me to look deeper. We met Jake in the lobby, his face grim. Talk to the staff, he said, keeping his voice low. Martha's story checks out, but there's more. I found a police report, buried, from 2 days ago. Clara was researching the Grace family, specifically Thomas Grace's descendants. She'd been asking around town, digging into their finances. Someone didn't like it. Ellie gasped, her hand covering her mouth. The photo, she said. Thomas Grace's family. They're still here, Billy. They own this hotel. The whispers roared, and I felt that shadow again, closer, its presence like a hand on my neck. I turned, expecting nothing, but there she was, Clara, a flicker at the end of the hallway, her silhouette pale and trembling. She raised a hand, pointing to my room, then vanished. The whispers laughed, low and cruel, as my phone buzzed with a new alert. Another leak, this time a photo of me holding the scarf, credited to Anonymous. Jake swore he didn't do it, but the damage was done. Someone was watching, and they were one step ahead. The Grand Elm Hotel was a spiderweb, and I was caught, every move tangling me deeper. Clara Henry's silhouette in the hallway, pointing to my room, had my heart slamming against my ribs. The whispers were a relentless hum, chanting closer in blood, their voices weaving through the chaos of another leaked photo, this one of me with Clara's scarf, plastered online. Jake Morrison swore he wasn't the leak, his face all honest panic, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Ellie West stood beside me in the lobby, clutching the photo of her mom with Thomas Grace, Edward's son, her eyes wide with the realization that his family still owned this place. The Grace bloodline was the key, tying Lillian's murder in 1923 to Clara's disappearance now. The hotel wasn't just haunted, it was a vault, guarding a legacy of betrayal. I pushed through the lobby, dodging reporters who'd doubled in number, their cameras flashing like vultures circling. "Billy, any comment on the ghost hunt?" one shouted, but I kept my head down, Ellie and Jake trailing me. My room was the only safe place left, but Clara's pointing figure lingered in my mind, her gesture a warning or a plea. The whispers agreed, urging inside as I unlocked the door. The air was cold, the smell of roses faint but sharp, and my bed was a mess, the mattress slightly askew. Someone had been here. "Check everything," I said, my voice low. Ellie started on the drawers, Jake the closet, while I knelt by the bed, lifting the mattress. Lillian's diary was still there, but Clara's journal was gone, along with the locket. My stomach dropped. "They took it," I said, standing, my hand shaking. "The journal, the locket. Someone knows exactly what we're doing." Ellie's face paled. "The Grace family," she whispered. "They've got people here, Billy. Staff, maybe guests. My mom said they never let go of this place." Jake cursed, slamming the closet door. "This is bad," he said, his voice tight. "But I've got something. That police report I found?" Clara wasn't just digging into Thomas Grace's descendants. She had a name, Richard Grace, Thomas's grandson. "He's alive, runs a real estate firm in Boston." She was meeting him the night she disappeared. The whispers surged, spitting Richard like a curse. I grabbed my phone, searching his name. A sleek website popped up, Richard Grace, mid-50s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, his bio boasting ties to Boston's oldest families. The hotel was listed as a heritage asset. He was the him Lillian's whispers chased, I could feel it. Clara had gotten too close, and now we were next. "We need to confront him," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. "Richard Grace knows what happened to Clara. And Lillian." Ellie grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Billy, no," she said, her voice breaking. My mom was terrified of the Graces. She said they'd do anything to protect their name. If they took the journal, they're watching us. Right now. The whispers laughed, low and cruel, and I felt that shadow again, its presence like a weight on my chest. I shook Ellie off, my resolve hardening. "I'm not stopping, Ellie. Clara's out there, or her ghost is, begging for help. Lillian's been screaming for a century. We owe them." Jake nodded, his eyes glinting with that dangerous ambition. "I can get us to Richard," he said. "I've got contacts, can pull some strings. But Billy, if we do this, it's all or nothing. The Graces don't play nice." Before I could answer, a scream tore through the wall, sharp and human, not a whisper. We froze, the sound coming from the hallway. I yanked open the door, the corridor empty but the air thick, like it was holding its breath. The whispers roared, chanting basement, and my gut twisted. Another trap, or the truth? We ran to the service stairs, the ones leading to the basement where we'd found the locket. The door was ajar, a faint glow spilling out. The whispers were deafening, Lillian's voice clear above them. "He buried me," she said, over and over, her words a knife. We crept down, the air growing colder, the smell of roses and damp earth choking. At the bottom, a crate was overturned, papers scattered, and there, in the corner, a flicker of movement. Clara's scarf, the one from the garden, lay on the floor, but it was what was above it that stopped me cold. A figure, pale and trembling, stood against the wall, her blonde hair catching the light. Clara. Her eyes locked on mine, wide with terror, her lips moving. "Billy," she whispered, her voice real, not a ghost. "They're coming." Before I could move, she vanished, not fading like a spirit, but stepping into the shadows, like she'd been pulled. A crackle filled the air, and the smell of smoke hit me. Flames licked the crate, small but spreading fast, eating the papers. Jake grabbed my arm, yelling fire, but I lunged for the scarf, snatching it before the flames could take it. Ellie screamed, pulling us back as the fire grew, the basement filling with smoke. We stumbled up the stairs, coughing, the whispers laughing as the hotel fought to keep its secrets. Back in the lobby, alarms blared, guests pouring out as staff scrambled. Ellie was shaking, Jake's face grim. "That was her," I said, clutching the scarf, its silk singed but intact. "Clara's alive, or was. And someone set that fire to stop us." Ellie's eyes darted to the photo in her hand, Thomas Grace's face staring back. "Richard," she said, her voice hollow. "He's covering his tracks. Just like Edward." The whispers agreed, their voices sharp. "Blood," they said, and I knew we were running out of time. Clara was slipping away, Lillian's justice hanging by a thread, and the Grace family was closing in. I looked at Jake, then Ellie, my voice hard. "We find Richard Grace. Tomorrow. No more hiding." But as we split up, the scarf in my pocket felt heavier, and Clara's terrified eyes haunted me. The hotel wasn't just hiding secrets, it was protecting a killer. The Grand Elm Hotel was burning through its secrets, and that fire in the basement had nearly taken us with it. Clara Henry's terrified face, her whisper "they're coming," was seared into my mind, her scarf singed but heavy in my pocket. The whispers were relentless, chanting blood and Richard, pointing straight at Richard Grace, Thomas's grandson, Edward's heir. The hotel's alarms had stopped, but the lobby was chaos, guests milling, staff shouting, the air thick with smoke and suspicion. Ellie West clung to the photo of her mom with Thomas Grace, her eyes haunted, while Jake Morrison paced, his usual charm buried under grim focus. Lillian Grace's diary was safe under my mattress, but Clara's journal and the locket were gone, stolen by someone who knew exactly what we were chasing. The Grace family wasn't just watching, they were moving pieces, and we were running out of board. I pulled Ellie and Jake to a quiet corner, away from the reporters still sniffing for a story. "We need to get to Richard Grace," I said, keeping my voice low. "Clara was alive down there, or close to it. She's running from him, or his people. That fire was no accident." Ellie's hand shook, the photo crinkling. "Billy, this is insane," she said, her voice cracking. "My mom knew the Graces were dangerous. If Richard's behind this, he's not just covering up Lillian's murder. He's protecting the whole family legacy. We can't just walk into his office." Jake nodded, his eyes sharp. "She's right, Billy," he said. "But I've got a lead. Richard's firm has a gala tomorrow night, some charity thing in Boston. I can get us in, call in a favor. It's our shot to confront him, or at least get eyes on him." I didn't trust Jake's favors, not after those leaked photos, but we had no other way in. "Fine," I said, my voice hard. "But no games, Jake. We're there for Clara and Lillian, not your byline." He nodded, but his jaw was tight, like he was biting back a retort. The whispers stirred, soft but clear, muttering basement again. I frowned, the memory of the fire still raw. "We need to check the basement one more time," I said. "Before the staff cleans it up." Clara was there. "She left something, I know it." Ellie hesitated, her face pale. "After the fire," she said. "Billy, it's a mess down there. And if Richard's people are watching, they'll know we're not stopping." "Then we move fast," I said, the whispers urging now. We slipped through the chaos, finding the service stairs unguarded, the basement door still ajar. The air was acrid, smoke lingering, but the fire was out, leaving charred crates and ash. The whispers guided me to the corner where Clara had stood, her scarf now in my pocket but her presence still heavy. I knelt, sifting through the debris, my fingers brushing something cold. The locket, Lillian's locket, its silver blackened but intact. It hadn't been here before, someone had dropped it, or Clara had left it. I held it up, the whispers roaring hers. Ellie gasped, stepping closer. "That's it, isn't it?" she said. Lillian's. How'd it get here? Clara, I said, my voice steady. She's trying to tell us something. I opened the locket, the photo of Lillian inside untouched by the fire. But there was something new, a tiny slip of paper tucked behind it. I unfolded it, my heart racing. A single word, scrawled in shaky ink, Edward. The whispers screamed, Lillian's voice clear and furious. He buried me, she said, the same words from the basement. Edward Grace, her killer, his name tying everything together. Clara had known, had carried this locket, and now she was running or gone because of it. I pocketed the locket, the paper burning in my mind. Jake was sifting through the ash, his hands dirty. Nothing else here, he said, but his eyes darted to the locket, too hungry. Billy, that's proof. Edward Grace murdered Lillian. If Richard's covering it up, we've got him. I shook my head, the whispers warning careful. Not yet, I said. Clara's still out there. We confront Richard, we do it smart. But as we climbed the stairs, the whispers shifted, muttering betrayal. I glanced at Jake, his face unreadable, and felt a chill. He'd leaked before, or someone had. Was he playing us, feeding info to Richard's people? Back in my room, I hid the locket with the diary, the scarf beside it. Ellie sat on the bed, her voice soft. Billy, I found something else, she said, pulling out a folded paper. From the staff records. My mom's file. She didn't just quit. She was fired, the day after she met Thomas Grace. The note says interference. My stomach twisted. Interference, I said. She got too close, like Clara. The Graces have been silencing people for decades. The whispers agreed, chanting bloodline. Edward, Thomas, Richard, a chain of lies stretching across a century. That night, I couldn't sleep, the whispers too loud, Clara's face too vivid. I was about to check the diary again when a text from Jake lit up my phone. Got us into the gala. Tomorrow, 7. But Billy, I need to tell you something. Meet me, East Wing, now. I hesitated, the whispers hissing trap. Jake's loyalty was shaky, and his timing felt off. But I needed to know what he was hiding. I grabbed the scarf, slipping into the East Wing's dim hallway. The panel to the staircase was still padlocked, but Jake was there, his face grim, no camera in sight. Billy, he said, his voice low. I screwed up. Those leaks, they weren't me, but I know who. A contact, someone tied to Richard. I didn't know they'd use it like this. They've got eyes everywhere, even in the hotel. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. You led them to us, Jake, I said. Clara's running because of you. Why should I trust you now? He opened his mouth, but a creak from the panel stopped him. The padlock was gone, the panel ajar, a faint light spilling out. The whispers screamed inside, and Clara's voice came again, soft but clear. Billy, it's here. I pushed past Jake, my heart pounding, and stepped through the panel. A hidden passage stretched before me, its walls rough, a shrine of old photos and candles at the end. Clara's scarf was there, pinned to the wall, and above it, a name carved in stone, Lillian Grace. The Grand Elm Hotel's hidden passage was wound in the building's heart, its rough stone walls closing in as I stared at the shrine to Lillian Grace. Clara Henry's scarf hung pinned beneath Lillian's name, carved deep, the candles below flickering like they were breathing. The whispers were a storm, chanting truth and blood, their voices raw with Lillian's rage. Jake Morrison stood behind me, his confession about the leaks still ringing, his claim that Richard Grace's people were watching us twisting my gut. The air was thick, the Roseanne rust scent choking, and Clara's voice, that faint "it's here," echoed in my skull. The hotel wasn't just hiding secrets, it was screaming them, and I was too deep to turn back. I stepped closer to the shrine, my hands shaking as I touched the scarf. It was hers, no question, the silk still warm, like she'd just been here. Photos lined the shrine, faded sepia shots of Lillian, her wide eyes staring out, and one of Edward Grace, his smile sharp, predatory. A scrap of paper was tucked under a candle, its edges charred. I unfolded it, my heart racing. June 11th, 1923, it read. He sealed her in. The walls keep her. The whispers roared, Lillian's voice clear above them. Edward, she hissed, her pain a blade. Jake grabbed my shoulder, his voice low. Billy, this is it, he said, his eyes wide. Proof. Edward murdered Lillian, hid her here. Clara found this place, and Richard's covering it up. He reached for his phone, probably to snap a photo, but I slapped his hand away. No, I said, my voice sharp. No more leaks, Jake. You said Richard's people are watching. This stays with us until we confront him. I pocketed the paper, the scarf heavy in my hand. The whispers agreed, muttering careful, but their tone was off, almost mocking. Was Lillian guiding me, or pushing me into a trap? A noise echoed from deeper in the passage, a low scrape, like stone on stone. The candles flickered, and the air grew colder, the shadows stretching too long. We're not alone, I whispered, my skin prickling. Jake nodded, his face pale, no trace of his usual swagger. We backed toward the panel, but the whispers turned violent, a scream tearing through my head. Lillian's voice, raw and desperate. He's here, she cried, and my vision blurred, my body jerking like something had grabbed me. For a second, I wasn't in the passage. I was Lillian, her hands pounding against a wall, her screams muffled as stone closed in. Edward's face the last thing she saw, his eyes cold, triumphant. The vision snapped, and I was back, gasping, my knees hitting the floor. Jake caught me, his voice urgent. Billy, what the hell was that? He said, his grip tight. Lillian, I choked out, my throat raw. She showed me. Edward sealed her in, alive. This passage, it's her tomb. The whispers softened, almost mournful, but they added a new word, Clara. I stood, my resolve hardening. She's here, or was. We need to find her. We moved deeper, the passage narrowing, the walls damp under my fingers. The whispers guided us to a dead end, a slab of stone etched with faint scratches, like nails had clawed it. I pressed against it, the stone cold, unyielding. Clara! I called, my voice echoing. No answer, but the whispers hummed, urging push. I leaned harder, and the slab shifted, grinding open to reveal a small chamber, its air stale, heavy with decay. Inside, the floor was littered with papers, old letters, and there, in the center, a body. Blonde hair, pale skin, curled up like she was sleeping. Clara Henry. I froze, my heart stopping, the whispers silent for the first time. Jake cursed, stepping back, but I knelt beside her, my hands shaking as I touched her arm. Cold, too cold, but her chest moved, a faint rise and fall. She's alive, I whispered, relief flooding me. Clara, it's Billy. We're here. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused, her lips moving. Richard, she mumbled, her voice barely a breath. He knows. Lillian's truth. Before she could say more, a shadow moved behind us, tall and sharp, the same one I'd felt since the attic. The whispers screamed, Lillian's voice a wail. Run, she cried, and the slab began to grind shut, stone scraping stone. I grabbed Clara, pulling her up, her weight heavy but adrenaline stronger. Jake helped, his face grim, and we stumbled back through the passage, the shadow chasing, its presence like a hand on my neck. The candles at the shrine went out, plunging us into darkness, but the whispers guided us, faint but clear. We burst through the panel, collapsing in the east wing, Clara limp in my arms. Ellie was there, her face pale, a flashlight shaking in her hand. Billy, she gasped, rushing over. What happened? Is that Clara? I nodded, laying Clara on the floor, her breathing shallow but steady. She's alive, Ellie, I said, my voice rough. But Richard Grace did this. He's hiding Lillian's murder, and Clara found proof. I held up the paper from the shrine, its words damning. We need to get her out of here, now. Ellie's eyes darted to the panel, still open, the passage dark. "The Graces," she said, her voice trembling. "They'll come for us, Billy." My mom knew, and they silenced her. "We can't fight them." "We don't have a choice," I said, the whispers stirring again, chanting justice. Clara's eyes opened, locking on mine, her voice a whisper. "The shrine," she said. "It's all there. Lillian's proof." She coughed, her strength fading, and I knew we had to move fast. Jake was quiet, his eyes on Clara, but I caught him slipping his phone back into his pocket. Had he texted someone? The whispers hissed betrayal, and my trust in him cracked further. We carried Clara to my room, hiding her under blankets, her condition too fragile for a hospital run with reporters swarming. The passage, the shrine, Lillian's tomb, it all pointed to Richard Grace, and tomorrow's gala was our last shot to end this. But as I locked the door, the whispers laughed, low and cruel, and I felt that shadow again, closer now, waiting just beyond the walls. The Grand Elm Hotel was a beast, and we'd poked it one too many times. Clara Henry lay on my bed, her breathing shallow, her blonde hair matted with dust from the hidden passage. Finding her alive in that stone chamber, curled up beside Lillian Grace's shrine, had been a miracle, but her whispered "Richard knows" was a warning we couldn't ignore. The whispers were relentless, chanting justice and expose, their voices sharp with Lillian's fury. Ellie West sat beside Clara, her face pale, clutching the photo of her mom with Thomas Grace, while Jake Morrison paced, his phone suspiciously quiet after I'd caught him slipping it away. The singed scarf, Lillian's diary, and the charred note from the shrine were all we had left, proof that Edward Grace sealed Lillian in the walls and Richard Grace was burying the truth. The gala tonight was our chance to confront him, but the hotel felt like it was closing in, its walls humming with menace. I knelt by Clara, brushing hair from her face. "Clara, can you hear me?" I said, my voice soft. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused, but she nodded, her lips moving. "The shrine," she mumbled, her voice raw. "Letters, proof. Edward killed her. Richard, he found me." She coughed, her strength fading, and my heart twisted. She'd been so close to exposing the Graces, and they'd nearly silenced her for good. Ellie grabbed my arm, her voice trembling. "Billy, we can't keep her here," she said. "The Graces have eyes everywhere. My mom warned me, they don't just cover things up, they erase people. We need to get Clara out, now." I nodded, but the whispers hissed stay, their tone urgent. "We can't run yet," I said, standing. "Clara found proof in that shrine, letters tying Edward to Lillian's murder. If we get those, we can nail Richard at the gala. End this for Lillian, for Clara." I turned to Jake, my eyes narrowing. "You're sure about this gala, Jake? No tricks? Because I'm done with surprises." He stopped pacing, his face tight. "I'm sure, Billy," he said, his voice low. "My contact got us in, no strings. But Richard's not stupid. He'll have security, and if he knows Clara's alive, he'll be ready." His eyes flicked to Clara, then away, and I didn't like the shadow in them. The whispers muttered "watch him," and I agreed. We moved Clara to Ellie's staff quarters, a cramped room off the lobby, locking the door and propping a chair under the handle. She was stable, sipping water, but too weak to move far. "I'll stay with her," Ellie said, her voice firm. "You and Jake get to the gala, find those letters if you can. But Billy, be careful. My mom never recovered from crossing the Graces." I hugged her, the photo of her mom heavy in my pocket. "We'll finish this, Ellie," I said. "For your mom, too." The whispers hummed, approving, but their edge was sharp, like they knew something I didn't. The gala was in a sleek Boston ballroom, all glass and gold, a far cry from the hotel's dusty secrets. Jake and I slipped in, my hoodie traded for a borrowed dress that felt like a costume, his usual jeans swapped for a suit. The room buzzed with Boston's elite, Richard Grace at the center, his smile polished but his eyes cold, scanning the crowd. The whispers were faint here, drowned by chatter, but they muttered letters, urging me back to the hotel. Jake leaned close, his voice low. He's untouchable here, he said. We need to get back to the shrine, grab those letters before his people do. I nodded, but my gut screamed trap. Jake's contact, his convenient leads, it all felt too neat. I played along, slipping out with him, the city's lights blurring as we raced back to the hotel. The east wing was silent, the panel to the passage still open, like it was waiting. The whispers roared as we entered, guiding us to the shrine. The candles were cold, but the letters Clara mentioned were there, tucked under Lillian's photo, a bundle of brittle pages. I grabbed them, scanning the words. Edward's handwriting, confessing to sealing Lillian in the passage, his fear of her knowing too much. My hands shook, the proof undeniable, but the whispers turned frantic, screaming he's here. I spun, expecting Richard, but it was Jake, his face pale, his phone out, texting. Billy, I can explain, he said, stepping back, but the whispers drowned him out, Lillian's voice a wail. Betrayer, she screamed, and the passage shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The candles flared, and there she was, Lillian Grace, her form flickering at the shrine, her eyes locked on me, not Jake. Billy, she said, her voice clear, broken. Expose him. Richard hides my truth. Clara died for it. My heart stopped. Died? Clara was alive, wasn't she? I stumbled back, the letters slipping from my hands, as Lillian reached out, her touch ice on my skin. The passage dimmed, and Jake's voice cut through, urgent. Billy, we need to go. We ran, the letters clutched tight, the shrine collapsing behind us, stones falling like the hotel was tearing itself apart. Back in the east wing, I rounded on Jake, my voice sharp. Who are you texting, Jake? I said, shoving him against the wall. Richard? You've been feeding him, haven't you? He shook his head, his eyes wide. Not Richard, Billy, I swear. My editor, okay? I told her we had proof, to hold a story. I'm not the enemy. But the whispers hissed liar, and I didn't believe him. We raced to Ellie's quarters, my heart pounding with Lillian's words. Clara died. I burst in, finding Ellie kneeling by the bed, her face streaked with tears. Clara was still, her eyes closed, her chest unmoving. She's gone, Ellie sobbed, her voice breaking. She just stopped breathing. The whispers mourned, Lillian's voice soft now, grieving. Clara, she said, and I sank to the floor, the letters heavy in my hands, Clara's scarf heavier in my pocket. Richard Grace had won, silencing her like Edward silenced Lillian. But I wasn't done. The gala was over, but Richard wasn't untouchable. Not anymore. The Grand Elm Hotel was a grave, and Clara Henry's death was its latest marker. She lay still in Ellie West's staff quarters, her face peaceful but empty, her fight for Lillian Grace's truth snuffed out. The whispers were quiet, mourning, their usual fire dimmed to a soft hum of justice and end. I sat on the floor, the letters from the shrine, Edward Grace's confession to sealing Lillian alive, crumpled in my hands. Clara's scarf was heavy in my pocket, her last words, Richard knows, a blade in my chest. Ellie sobbed beside me, her grief raw, while Jake Morrison stood by the door, his face grim, his phone silent but his betrayal still burning in my mind. Richard Grace, Edward's heir, had silenced Clara, just as his family had buried Lillian's murder for a century. The gala was over, but this wasn't. I wasn't letting him win. I stood, my voice steady despite the ache. Ellie, we need to move, I said, gentle but firm. Clara's gone, but Lillian's still here, screaming for us to finish this. Richard's not walking away. Ellie wiped her eyes, her voice shaky. Billy, how, she said, her hands trembling. The Graces own this place, this city. My mom tried to fight them, and they broke her. Clara tried, and she's dead. What can we do? I held up the letters, their brittle pages heavy with truth. These, I said. Edward's own words, confessing he killed Lillian. Clara died to get them. We make them public, expose Richard, the whole Grace family. They can't silence everyone. The whispers stirred, chanting expose, their voices stronger, Lillian's pain fueling them. Jake stepped forward, his eyes sharp. "Billy's right," he said, his voice low. "I can get these to my editor, clean, no leaks. Front page, online, everywhere. Richard's done if this hits." He reached for the letters, but I pulled them back, the whispers hissing careful. "No," I said, my voice hard. "You've been texting someone, Jake. Your editor, you say, but I don't trust you. Clara's dead because someone knew too much. You want in, you prove it. No phones, no contacts. We do this ourselves." His jaw tightened, but he nodded, his hands up. "Fine, Billy," he said. "Your call. But we need a plan, fast. Richard's people are still out there, and they'll know Clara's gone." Ellie stood, her resolve hardening. "There's a conference room, second floor," she said. "It's got a projector, internet. We can scan the letters, upload them ourselves, bypass the press. My staff key works." Her eyes flicked to Clara, her voice breaking. "For her." The whispers roared, approving, and I felt Lillian's presence, a cold brush against my skin. "Do it," she whispered, her voice clear, urgent. I nodded, tucking the letters into my hoodie. "Let's go." We left Clara, locking the door, her scarf a weight I couldn't shake. The hotel was quiet, the lobby empty, reporters finally gone, but the air was thick, the chandeliers flickering like they knew what was coming. The conference room was a sterile box, its equipment outdated but functional. Ellie booted up the scanner, her hands steady now, while I spread the letters out, their words a gut punch. Edward's confession was stark, detailing how he lured Lillian to the passage, sealed her in to protect his name. Clara's notes were there too, scribbled on the margins, linking Richard to threats she'd received. Jake watched, his silence unnerving. "You sure about this, Billy?" he said, his voice soft. "Once these go out, there's no one doing it. The Graces will come for you." "Let them," I said, my voice cold. "Lillian's been waiting a century. Clara paid with her life. This ends now." The whispers agreed, chanting end, their voices a chorus. Ellie scanned the letters, her fingers flying as she uploaded them to a public drive, anonymous, untraceable. I typed a statement, short and sharp, calling out Richard Grace, the hotel, the blood on their legacy. My hands shook, but the whispers steadied me, Lillian's voice a whisper in my ear. "Free me," she said. We hit send, the files spreading like wildfire. The whispers sighed, almost relieved, but the room grew colder, the lights flickering. A crash echoed from the hallway, heavy, like stone falling. Ellie froze, her eyes wide. "The hotel," she said, her voice trembling. "It's fighting back." I grabbed the letters, stuffing them into my hoodie, and we ran, the hallway shaking, dust falling from the ceiling. The east wing's panel was open, the passage exposed, and the whispers screamed, Lillian's voice a wail. "He's here," she cried, and I felt that shadow, closer, its presence a weight on my chest. The walls groaned, cracks spiderwebbing across the plaster, like the hotel was tearing itself apart. We reached the lobby, guests screaming, staff running as chandeliers swayed. Jake grabbed my arm, his face pale. "Billy, we need to get out," he said, but I shook him off, the whispers roaring stay. Lillian wasn't done. I turned to the reception desk, where Ellie was frozen, staring at the floor. The photo of her mom and Thomas Grace lay there, torn in half, like a warning. "Ellie, come on!" I yelled, pulling her toward the exit, but the ground shook, a low rumble building. The whispers were frantic, Lillian's voice clear above them. "Justice," she said, and I saw her, flickering at the edge of the lobby, her form pale, her eyes locked on me. She pointed to the basement, her gesture final. "Billy, no!" Jake shouted, but I was already moving, the letters burning in my pocket, Clara's scarf heavier than ever. The basement door was open, the air thick with smoke and roses. The passage was collapsing, stones falling, but Lillian's shrine stood untouched, her name glowing in the dark. I stopped, my heart pounding, and she appeared, not a flicker but solid, her face twisted with grief and rage. "Expose him," she said, her voice echoing in my bones. "Richard carries his blood. End it." The hotel shook, a final groan, and I knew we had minutes before it came down. I turned to run, but Jake was gone, his absence a stab of betrayal. Ellie was there, her eyes wide, and we bolted, the whispers fading as we hit the lobby, the hotel crumbling behind us. The Grand Elm Hotel was dying, its walls cracking like bones as Ellie West and I stumbled into the lobby, the air thick with dust and the echo of Lillian Grace's final command. The letters, Edward Grace's confession to sealing her alive, were safe in my hoodie, their truth now burning across the internet, exposing Richard Grace and his family's century-long lie. Clara Henry's scarf was a weight in my pocket, her death a wound that wouldn't close. The whispers were soft now, almost gentle, murmuring free and done, but Lillian's presence lingered, her last words, "End it," a fire in my chest. Jake Morrison was gone, vanished in the basement's chaos, his betrayal confirmed but his fate unclear. The hotel groaned, chandeliers crashing, and I knew we had seconds to get out before it buried us too. "Ellie, move!" I shouted, grabbing her arm as we ran for the exit, the floor buckling under us. Guests screamed, staff scrambled, but the whispers guided me, Lillian's voice a steady pull through the panic. We burst onto the street, Boston's cold air hitting like a slap, the hotel's facade crumbling behind us, stone and glass raining down. Sirens wailed, red lights flashing, but I couldn't look away, the Grand Elm's collapse a final act of surrender, its secrets spilling into the open. Ellie sank to the curb, her face streaked with dust, the photo of her mom and Thomas Grace clutched in her hand. "It's over, Billy," she said, her voice raw. "Clara, my mom, Lillian, they're free, right? We did it." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for confirmation, but the whispers were quiet, leaving me to answer alone. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "We did it." But Clara's death, Jake's disappearance, and Richard Grace's shadow hung heavy. The letters had exposed Edward's crime, tied Richard to Clara's silencing, but justice felt hollow when the cost was so high. I pulled out the scarf, its singed silk soft against my fingers, and handed it to Ellie. "For Clara," I said. "She started this. We finished it." Ellie nodded, tears falling, and tucked the scarf with the photo, her hands steady now. The whispers stirred, a single word, peace, and I felt Lillian's presence lift, like a weight slipping away. She was free, her truth told, her rage spent. But the hotel's collapse didn't feel like the end, not entirely. Richard Grace was out there, his empire cracked but not broken, and Jake's absence gnawed at me. Had he run, betrayed us to Richard, or been caught in the rubble? The next morning, the news was everywhere, headlines screaming about the Grand Elm's secrets, Edward's murder, Richard's ties to Clara's death. My statement, uploaded from the conference room, had gone viral, the letters scanned shared thousands of times. Reporters swarmed, but I slipped away, back to my tour bus, Boston's skyline fading as I left the city behind. Ellie stayed, promising to help the police, to tell her mom's story, to rebuild what the Graces had broken. She'd found her strength, and I was proud, but the whispers weren't done with me. On the bus, alone, I opened Lillian's diary one last time, its pages brittle but alive with her voice. A new note was there, not in her handwriting, not in Clara's, but fresh, ink still wet. "Thank you," it read, and the whispers sighed, a final breath. I closed the diary, my heart heavy but steady, and looked out the window, the road stretching into the unknown. But as the bus rolled on, a shadow flickered in the corner of my eye, gone when I turned. The whispers, silent for hours, spoke one last time, soft and sharp. "Who?" they said, and my blood ran cold. Clara's killer, Richard or someone he'd sent, was still out there, the question unanswered, the truth incomplete. Lillian was free, Clara avenged, but the Grace legacy wasn't buried, not yet. I leaned back, the scarf's weight gone but its memory heavy, and knew this wasn't over. Not for me. Thank you for listening to these incredible stories. Our team would really appreciate it if you give us a like and comment. Your opinion is very important to us. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed.